the regular session of the Louisiana State Legislature in the year 1986, the Davy Crockett Firehouse on Lafayette Street in Old Gretna was designated as the official fire museum for the state of Louisiana. The city of Gretna moved to establish the museum to preserve and present memorabilia relative to the history of firefighting in America in appreciation of the contributions of firemen and fire departments to the public health and safety and economic development of all cities and communities of the state, whose very existence depended on the courage and resourcefulness of firefighters at a time when conflagration meant total destruction. The Louisiana State Firemen's Association was founded in that very building in the year 1906. The jewel of the collection in the Fire Museum, which is listed in the National Register of Historic Places, is the pumper, built in 1876. Steam pumper fire engines were in use in American firefighting from the mid-19th to the early 20th century. Almost every major town in the country had a steam pumper fire engine during this period. There are fewer than 50 of these fire engines left in the country. Less than a dozen of them were manufactured prior to 1880, as was the Davy Crockett engine. Finally, the Crockett engine is one of the very few remaining in its original setting in the city it served. President of the Gretna Historical Society, Lloyd and Roy Cascio, who served for 23 years as president of the Davy Crockett Fire Department, guided us through the intricacies of the old pumper named the Iona Ivor. Gentlemen, this is a beautiful piece of work here. I've been admiring it ever since we came in. Tell me a little bit about it. I know it's the oldest steamer still in existence in the United States. It was made, I believe, in Burlington, Vermont, in about 1875. First of all, how does it work?
Works by steam, by feeding coal or wood. I might mention it's also the smallest fire steam engine built.
How much water does it put out?
250 gallons per minute.
Why don't we explain how it operates? Because to me it's a bewildering piece of equipment, but then to me a pencil is a bewildering piece of equipment.
Well, basically the firemen would stay back here and feed the coal into the boiler here, into the fire pit, and they would heat the water up, and the water would turn into steam. The steam would go in and turn the pistons that would turn this wheel there, get it going, and that would pump the water out through this hose here.
All right, that is basically a big boiler in the back there.
That's correct.
What about the little bulb in front of it? It seems to be made out of copper.
The bulb in front was to keep a constant pressure coming through the hose. In other words, your cylinder here, the steam would cause it to go up and down to pump water into your bulb there. This bulb, with the pressure on top and the water, would have a constant stream of water coming out of your hose. Of course, this is your suction hose that would be put on the other end and throw it into a canal or a well. At that time, they had wells until the Union Oil Company put the first pipeline down. And they came into Lafayette Street and ran a line 2 blocks long from the Union Oil Company. Now, this pumper cost $2,000 when bought, $1 per pound. They couldn't raise enough money to pay for it, and they were about to lose it. The Union Oil Company caught on fire. This pumper was rushed out on the wall, and they used it to pump on the wall. They wasn't successful in saving the wall. But down here, there's a place for a little water hose. You turn the water hose on, and they kept putting water on the dock and on the steamer while it was pumping. And when the fire was over, this steamer was out in the river on a little piece of wall. The Union Oil Company had to rent barges and float this steamer back over the levee. And they donated the amount of money needed to pay for the steamer, or else Crockett would have lost it. They didn't have enough money to pay for it.
Originally, this was bought strictly for horse-drawn.
I was about to ask, you mentioned it was 2,000 pounds, you know, did men run down the street pulling it or what?
But it was horse-driven, but at times got so bad, well, we were volunteers, they were volunteers at that time, that they couldn't even afford the horses. So they got rid of the horses. That's when the men started pulling it.
Well, they did pull it.
Men pull it.
This seat up in the front is where the driver sat, I assume. And then along here, this is where the horses were.
Well, they had longer tongues when the horses, but when the men started pulling it.
And then the men just grabbed hold of it and then pulled it along.
Which we've done in parades ourselves. We pull it, and that's where we pull it.
Do you still use this for parades of any kind? I know you don't use it to fight fires anymore, but is it too old and valuable and fragile to be used much?
Basically, it's too fragile, so we use it for our own parade. And one of our greatest thrills we had was when we used to pull it in Night in Old New Orleans parade. We used to have a great turnout, and it was a great thrill to put it in there. But basically, it's just used for our own parades now.
The wheels are essentially old wagon wheels, and I made the mistake of assuming that the black part was rubber, and I found out I was wrong.
That's strictly iron. And those wheels have to, periodically, after so many years, they have to be taken off and soaked in water to swell back up to fit.
The moisture in the wood dries out, and you have to soak them in water, otherwise they'll just...
They get loose and they wobble and things like that.
The hose, I imagine, is...
It's our plans in the future, and I spoke to Blaine Cohen, and he has taken a measurement of having two life-size horses, make two life-size horses to hook to the front. Now, I've been traveling a lot and looking at a lot of steamers throughout our nation, and there's a lot of steamers on the market, none like this. And none of them were rigged up as if they were ready to go to a fire. So I feel one of the things that we will have in our museum to make it more active looking is to have two life-size artificial horses made to hook to the steamer, and I think it would sort of
and then
add
people
to
who
it.
come to the museum will really see it as an
Right.
actual.
The original.
I was looking at the hose earlier, and it's painted white now, but I assume that it wasn't painted when it was actually in use, was it?
I wouldn't call, but these hoses right now have a steel plate. If not, they would be like this. But we put the steel plate in here, and we wrapped it with this white binding.
That's to preserve it.
Yeah, to keep it on there so you can see the rest of the pump.
I referred earlier to the bulb made out of copper. Is that copper?
Yes.
And what else is the machine made of there? We've got wood, iron, copper.
Basically, copper is the...
This is brass.
Well,
The shiny top is copper, and this is silver. The base of this...
The boiler is silver.
The boiler is silver. Silver plate.
that's the covering on the outside of the boiler.
It's a covering.
Yeah.
This is actually
The inside is strictly iron.
And the inside is brass coils,
Well, that's the coils, yeah.
you know, and your fire from the bottom. And then, too, there's an exhaust that comes out of this part, this pumping unit, and goes up into the stack. And that exhaust causes a draft. Like in the olden days, you had a fireplace and you had a flue or something that you create a draft. Well, that steam, that exhaust steam goes back in here, creates a draft, and makes this fire really burn. That's how they kept such a terrific fire and heat in there.
3 items on there. The plate on, I guess you'd call it the chimney, Iona Ivor. The name is purely decoration, I suppose. And then the eagle, I suppose, is decoration. But what is that under the eagle? Is that like a
That's
gas
a lamp.
lamp?
That's a lamp.
It's a lamp.
A kerosene lamp. And we parade, we just light that up, and it
In
shows
those days, instead of a siren, was that a sign to the people that the engine was on the way, or?
I don't know if it was that or just to show the name and maybe light up some of the area that around the unit itself. Because remember, in those days you had no lights, no web.
Well, that's true, and you didn't have street
So
corner lamps as often as not. But I think there's a lot of workmanship in here that we don't see much anymore. And things like the nameplate and the eagle and the lamp also speaks to something of the pride that people had in their company and in themselves and in the work that they're doing. So it's really very fitting that this be in the museum because it speaks to the history and the tradition and the pride.
If you look on the other side, you'll see, the David Crockett's on the side, but on that glass.
You see, what happened, they broke the eagle off. When they put the eagle on, they put it on wrong because over here, there's a glass with nothing written on it. And that was supposed to be facing this way so the light would be on this contraption. There's your whistle up there and your steam gauges, and your light would be this way. When they put the eagle back on, they put it wrong. So the glass with nothing on it is facing outside.
Instead of the back. And David Crockett should be forward.
Yeah. You have to be very careful. A lot of times in handling it, you know, they get a little reckless, and they had forgot to raise the door up where it's kept now, and they knocked the eagle off and broke it. So it shows you what can happen.
All the parts in there are still movable.
It's still a working engine after 112 years. Well, I hope we never have need for it. It's good to know that it's still there. Firefighting equipment has evolved over the history of firefighting. The museum, which was just beginning operations when we visited, is collecting artifacts which show this evolution.
Now the helmet that you see first was a very type of fire helmets they used in the early days. Next to it is a horn, which was used to magnify their voices as a chief, and the executives of the fire gave their command. Next to it is one of the old boots. Now it's not the only type they used. Most of the types they used came up to the hip, but these were used for the most shorter people that in climbing ladders that it wouldn't affect them. Next to it, the yellow helmet was the first safety helmet that they used in the city of Gretna. Then next to it is all the modern paraphernalia that is being used. This is your hat with the safety shield in front, and your boots that now have the steel plate in the toes and the heels and in the bottom.
The David Crockett Fire Company has an impressive record of dedication in the history of firefighting in the United States. Company records document that members of the department have met monthly for the last 146 years. As of February 1982, the members had logged a total of 1,676 consecutive meetings. Its operations have never been interrupted by wars, epidemics, or other disasters. It has also kept its volunteer status for its entire history. It is believed to be the oldest continuously active volunteer fire company in the United States.
It was organized in 1841, and it has been in continuous existence. We have never failed to have a meeting in its 145, 146 years of age. And what we did, at one time, when we started having a paid chauffeur, we had one chauffeur. If he worked 24 hours a day, he got 1 day a week off. And on that day, he was off from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And that chauffeur lived at the fire station. We'd give him a free house, free lights and water and gas, and he stayed there continually. So, of course, if he had any children, they were born there. So they had a little boy by the name of David Crockett Lever. We christened him that because he was born there in the back of the fire station. So in order to have a meeting sometime, if we didn't have a quorum of men, we'd go down and take old David Crockett up because we made him a life member. And we'd bring David Crockett up. And we have had a meeting in the whole length of service of the fire company's been in existence. And we have had plenty of disputes of other fire companies. One in Roanoke, Virginia, who disputed our title as being the oldest continuous active volunteer fire department in the United States. And we sent, unbeknown to them, a man who was on vacation, and we gave him some extra money to reroute his vacation and pass through there. And he checked the books and went to the city hall, and he found out that they were in existence, but they changed their name 2 or 3 times. And there was some time during the World Wars that they did not meet because all the men were, connected with the service. But we always had enough men to meet and to carry on the obligation.
Well, that's a very old picture showing the fire company in their dress uniform, which is still used today when we go to parades and we pull the old fire steamer. The young man standing right in front, or I should say young boy, was made a life member at birth, and his name is David Crockett Lieber.
This is a picture of the godmother of the old Iona Iva. She was christened on the day of the christening of the Iona Iva, and that's the reason why her name, and she was picked to be the godmother. Every year, for a parade, we select someone to represent her and ride the steamer. In this particular picture is Ison Maria Gomez, who is that is her great aunt that you see her pictured there with, and she was selected to ride the steamer one year in place of her aunt, who is now deceased. This is the oldest newspaper in existence today that was published in the city of Gretna. It's known as the Gretna Courier. And that particular page, it was a one-page newspaper, and it carried the event of the christening of the old Iona from the very start in the morning up to the time at night when they had the dance.
There have been many fires responded to, and much dedicated service attested by the record. There have been many devastating fires in the city of Gretna. One nearly laid waste to the town.
All that is the Pick fertilizer fire, which we consider to be probably the largest fire that we've had here in the city of Gretna, because it practically destroyed 1 square block of property.
Lloyd Gomez, honorary lifetime president of the Gretna Historical Society, longtime member of the Davy Crockett Volunteer Fire Department. This, I know, is a very happy day for you. Why don't you tell us what's going on?
Today we meet to sign the charter of a newly formed organization known as Friends of the State Fire Museum. The Davy Crockett Fire Station was just recently made a state museum by an act of legislature. And therefore, the Historical Society is forming this organization to assist in the renovation that still has to be done before we open it as a state museum. It's about $40,000 more needed in the upstairs section. Right now, we are standing in the section that has completely been renovated. All we have to do now is place the old steamer in this section with the life-size horses and a few other relics to be on display. And then after that, then upstairs would be the rest of the relics and things.
You've got a lot of people here. Who all's here tonight?
Well, we have a few mayors here. Mayor of Harahan, Mayor of West Wego, Mayor from Thibodeau came in, and Harahan, Cannon, West Wego, and Thibodeau, and maybe the Mayor of New Orleans, we don't know, he was invited. And then we have the State Fire Marshal with us. We'll have Secretary of State Brown, who is coming in not only to sign the charter, but to take it with him to Baton Rouge to legalize it. He said he had never done that before, become a member of the organization, sign the charter, and then take it to Baton Rouge. So he's going to do that tonight. And that probably will be his last step as a state secretary.
So as of tonight, Louisiana State Firefighters Museum is an official going concern, right?
That's correct. That's up tonight.
And so everybody's invited to come see it. I think you'll enjoy it.
In other words, they'll be friends of the State Fire Museum. And that's the reason why we have a few past presidents here from the LSFA who are going to be made life honorary board members of this museum. Those are past presidents of the State Association. We have Mike Camasana from Baton Rouge, and the present board member from West Wego, and we have the state secretary with us, and the state president of LSFA. In fact, this is going to be their organization. It's a state organization, not a city organization.
Well, it looks like the party's getting ready to start, so I won't keep you any longer. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Bill Sanchez, president of the New Orleans Firefighters Union, International Association of Firefighters. You're here tonight for the dedication of the Louisiana State Firefighters Museum. What does this mean to firefighters generally, now that they have a museum of their own?
Well, you know, firefighters almost a forgotten society. We have been through some technological changes over the years that we know about, but not many other people do. Back in the early days of firefighting, we were a bucket brigade. In today's society, you almost have to be a chemist to be a firefighter, and not much of that has been recorded history. And we have been looking long and hard for a museum. We have attempted to establish one in New Orleans with very little success. And today, with the inaugural signing of the charter for the Davy Crockett Volunteer Firefighters Historical Museum is a large step for us. It gives us a sense of history and a sense of pride.
Well, no matter how much technology advances, in the long run, fighting a fire comes down to your men, correct?
Absolutely. You go back through the history of firefighting, and it's been the men on the front line that have done the job and been the men on the front line that have taken the risk. And we need someplace to go to remember that every now and then.
And we need to remember the smoke eaters. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
The Fire Museum stands as a tribute to the courage, dedication, and service of all firefighters everywhere. It may be visited in the city of Gretna as a glimpse into the past and a celebration of the men who wrote part of the history of our country in fire and blood.